My name is Ben Shadroff, and I'm here today with Judal. We're working with OffChain, and today's presentation is going to be Introduction to Blockchain. Normally, I work at HSBC on digital assets. I've been working with digital assets, starting with Bitcoin back in 2013. I've really stuck with this space because it's something that I believe in, and I've always really found the technology quite interesting. So I'm really happy today to be taking you guys on your first introduction into how blockchains work. With me is Judal. Judal, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Judal Zhao. I'm based in Shanghai. So I'm here with together with Benjamin representing OffChain, which is actually a global community for both old and new blockchain fans, so that we can gather together and discuss and learn more about this technology. So OffChain actually has a series of offline events like weekly drinks that's happening around the globe. We provided you a link to our OffChain Discord group. So welcome everyone to join this group so you can find out if there are events happening online or offline with OffChain. Myself actually started my journey with cryptocurrency back in 2020. So it's not that long ago, and it started knowing nothing about it. And for the past 2-3 years, I learned a lot. So I believe everyone can benefit from education and can master and understand blockchain. So today we also want to have a special thanks to Adele Shanin, who is from OffChain Global, and he's the guy behind the presentation deck that you see today.
Great. So today we're going to go through a number of different concepts. We're going to start off by introducing what is a blockchain and try to understand some of the reasons that it exists and how it technically works. We're then going to talk about decentralization. This is one of the factors that are broadly implemented by many blockchains, and we'll talk about its importances. We'll then go into some brief description on coins and tokens, and we'll specifically be talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum, two of the most common blockchain protocols in use today. We'll then go into a bit on what are exchanges and wallets and why they're necessary, and the various different types of wallets. Finally, today we're going to be going into a case study showing you guys how Metamask works as an application for a Web3 wallet, and then using POAP, Proof of Attendance Protocol, where for today, you'll be issued a free NFT, which will also help showcase one of the use cases of a blockchain. Of course, blockchains in general are quite complicated. There's a lot of different technologies, a lot of different use cases. So there are many, many future topics that we sadly will not be going into depth on today, including, in fact, some of the things we talk about, will just scrape the surface of it. But we hope to do this more often in the future. If you guys have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat through Zoom, but we will ask that you hold them and remain on mute throughout the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we will open it up for questions and we can talk more. So the first topic, what is a blockchain and what is this technology that powers it all? When I think of a blockchain, one of the first examples that we should think about is perhaps how banks operate today. Being able to send and receive payments normally happens through a centralized institution like a bank. The bank is centralized because it is a single entity, potentially multiple entities coordinating to each other, and they're saying who is sending payments from one person to the next. They're keeping the record, and they're the ones decrementing and incrementing accounts based on what transactions you send. This is a way of sending transactions, and it's worked quite well. Decentralized networks, however, are a way of sending and receiving a transaction without a centralized party. It allows us to keep a record to be able to ensure that every single party does not have to be involved in the transaction. There is no centralized party, therefore it's fully decentralized. We do this set of transactions in a way that are called blocks, which records what data is included to be able to process the transaction. This is then added to a subsequent block linking back to the previous block. Each block of transactions then links back and creates this chain that allows us to ensure that all the transactions are done in accordance with the consensus. All of these records are immutable, and this is quite important, meaning that once you write it down, it cannot change ever again. And they must follow certain rules. Just like a bank, You cannot double spend your money. I cannot send 100 RMB from one party to two other parties. I can only send it to a single party. The same types of rules are enforced in a decentralized network.
And here Ben mentioned about decentralization, which is a very critical and important concept to blockchain technology. And here we want to talk about why we focus so much on decentralization, what kind of benefits it actually can bring to people. So it's mostly four parts. One is about trustless. So essentially, we talk about like actually in a blockchain network, we don't have a centralized party to manage data or sharing data or verify transaction. Therefore, we actually have like a host of many people validating and upholding network. So as a result, everyone in this network is holding the same data. So if one person chooses to lie about the data, then the rest will reject the lie. So we can know that we can trust this network. Second is borderless. So because it's a network of node operators behind the blockchain, it's not really confined to any specific country or geographic location. Therefore, for instance, right now with the war happening in Ukraine and Russia, if you are trusting a centralized data provider and they have a data center in Ukraine, then you will experiencing problems to actually view the data. So that's why we it's also the same. The other thing is true is everyone else can also join this network from anywhere else in the rest of the world. The third part is transparent. So every transaction actually happening on blockchain, it is being recorded. There's actually Explorer where you can literally just type the address on a web browser, and you'll be able to see every transaction that is happening before and at the moment on the blockchain, and it is immutable. It cannot be changed. As a result, it also means that people cannot hide the data or manipulate the data without you actually knowing about it. The last thing is open. So it's also the same principle. Because of the decentralized nature of things, anyone have access to join this network and to build and leverage the network to just like everyone else. So you're not gonna have censorship, or you won't be able to lose access to this network because of either your political view or your race or your gender or anything else.
So one of the first blockchains to actually embrace this decentralization was Bitcoin. And of course, it is now the most notable. It is a digital currency. It is something that uses a blockchain without central controls. So is enforcing through decentralization the ability to send these currencies known as Bitcoins from one party to the next, and avoids any double spending without requiring a centralized party. This establishes what's called P2P or peer-to-peer money. Because it's distributed, it can be used as a payment network. Now, the payments themselves are done in Bitcoin. It has no knowledge of any other types of currencies other than Bitcoin, but it does allow people to securely send those Bitcoins from one party to the next. This then provides a store of value, meaning that you can measure how much somebody has received in terms of Bitcoin. And with this, it creates a global supply that people can then supply real world currencies to purchase these Bitcoins, meaning that there's a FX, foreign exchange, of value for pretty much every currency in the entire world to be able to exchange from that currency to Bitcoin. Interesting and unique about Bitcoin is that it has a fixed supply. The creator, who is anonymous, decided that 21 million Bitcoins will ever exist. And that seems like a very odd number, and it somewhat is. But what's interesting about it is you don't have to just believe what I'm saying. The source code is completely open source. And within that source code, you can see exactly what the supply would be. In fact, it's slightly less than 21 million, but we're not going to get into the technical details of it. It's about 21 million. At the moment, 18.875 million Bitcoins currently exist. In fact, in order to create Bitcoin, it requires somebody to actually do some effort. And we're going to talk about what that is next. Bitcoins don't just pop out of thin air. In fact, in order to be able to create a Bitcoin, it requires something called proof of work. And this is done through mining. You can think of mining as an analogy, just like going into a gold mine and having to do some digging and then perhaps some shoveling and then sifting, you might find some gold. It's similar in that concept, but that's pretty much where it ends. What mining means for proof of work is actually you're solving a very complicated math problem to add the next block to the chain. It means that the miners are receiving transactions from this decentralized network of people that want to go send some transaction. They then perform a complicated math problem on those transactions. And if they solve it, which takes a lot of effort, then they broadcast their proof to the rest of the network. The first one to prove that they have grouped together a set of transactions to form a block successfully ends up being accepted by the blockchain as the next block. And the problem then continues with the next set of transactions. The better the miner's hardware, the more likely it'll be they'll solve that math problem first. Now, this is quite technical, but because a lot of people ask, what is mining and how do we get into it? We thought we'd explain it. The idea, though, is something that nobody really has to go do to interact with the blockchain, but it is something happening behind the scenes, and that's how it's technically working. When you, as a party, would want to send on the Bitcoin network a transaction, for example, Jack wants to send some money to Elsa, they're going to broadcast signing a transaction and send it out to this decentralized group of computer called nodes. These nodes are going to relay that transaction around as a potential transaction. The miners are then going to listen to one and many of these potential transactions, try to solve a very complicated math problem that proves that these transactions are valid. And if they find a proof, they'll share that verification in the proof of work process. Once verified by other nodes on the blockchain, they will add it to the blockchain themselves and then call it as confirmed. At that point, Elsa receives the amount of money. Of course, to be absolutely certain that she has received that amount, she would need to wait for more blocks to be added to the blockchain. Once she has seen other blocks pass by, she now has absolute confirmation that it is immutable and that that money is completely received and cannot be ever changed again.
And Ben just introduced one of the most famous cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. And on this slide, we'll introduce you what's called Ethereum, which is one of the world's most popular programmable blockchain. Ethereum actually has its native cryptocurrency called ETH, ETH. So which is actually currently the world's second largest cryptocurrency in terms of market cap. By the end of the session, we'll share some resources, including a website where you can go on there and check out other cryptocurrencies. There are probably, currently there are tens of thousands out there, and you can see their values and their rankings and their performances. So Ethereum was launched in 2015, and it's expired by Bitcoin. One of the most critical differences is it added smart contract function to the blockchain so that coders can utilize this function to run programs automatically. What is a smart contract? It is, you can think of it as a series of if-then conditional language pre-written and stored on the blockchain. It's like a real-world contract. For example, you can have like insurance contract that says if Alice reaches 60 years old, then $10,000 US of insurance payment will be made to this particular bank account that belongs to Alice. So all these kind of functions can be actually coded as a smart contract and put on blockchain such as Ethereum and to be executed. As a result, more products and services can run on Ethereum. It's just like Apple's App Store. It can be a marketplace that offers almost endless utilities. But we refer to these apps on Ethereum as dApps, which is in short for decentralized apps. Because these apps, unlike most of the apps you find on other centralized platform, they will not steal your data. and they cannot censor you. It's open for all, well, in the most ideal cases. And some of the user cases of Ethereum is such as like token creation. Essentially, everyone can leverage Ethereum to create a token, which, for instance, you have your mini little dApps that has, it's like a game. So you have like a in-game currency, and such in-game currency can be a token. It's typically called a token. And with token creation, there's another usage, which is fundraising. So essentially, if you are a cryptocurrency project, you can actually issue your own token based on Ethereum. And then you can actually assign a value to this token. You can call it initial public offering. It's kind of like IPO price, where then people who believe in the future of your company or this particular crypto project can then actually buy these tokens. And then you actually get fundings to be able to hire programmers and hire people to keep working on your project. You also can use blockchain, especially Ethereum in this case, to do identification, which essentially we will actually later on, the POAP app is a great way of showing how we can identify you for attending this particular workshop. And because of the immutability of the blockchain, this attendance is forever being recorded and cannot be changed. So as a result, for instance, voting, one of the most popular events that requires identification, then can be done through the help of blockchain technology. Some other use cases, including like supply chain, where you can see that a complete history of supply chain is a very useful information that can be stored and shared and managed on blockchain. Then I also mentioned about gaming, the gaming inside tokens. Sometimes we can actually use NFT as a format of game tokens. And NFT stands for non-fungible token, which is actually tokens that we can use to represent ownership of a unique item. We will not, unfortunately, not have time to get into details about what NFT represents and mean, but we will have other sessions later on in other times to teach you more about this. But for instance, like in games, not only you have in-game currencies, you could also have like in-game weapons or say like skins. And each of these weapons and skins can be an individual NFT, which when you own it, it represents that, it basically means that you are the owner of this particular token. And then lastly, we also, I don't know, some of you might have heard of decentralized finance. It's essentially, it's a little bit like the traditional finance that we see nowadays, but it's decentralization is being built into this whole ecosystem, and it's being built on top of Ethereum or other blockchain networks. So for instance, one of the user case is borrowing and lending. So using smart contract, you can actually program to allow automatically locks your thing using a smart contract on Ethereum. And we also talk about, because there is not a single entity that runs these blockchains, such as Bitcoin or Ethereum, we have to actually create an incentive for people to maintain the network. So we can make an analogy that it's the same as paying your internet service provider or your cell phone carrier to use bandwidth or send text messages. So you're basically paying for people to process the transaction. These transaction fees are paid in a native token, native coin of the blockchain, as explained in the mining part by Ben of Bitcoin. So these node operators or miners are paid Bitcoin for resolving the math problem. And such process requires a node operator to download software and existing blockchain data. They also have to use very expensive hardware to do the calculation. By resolving the calculation itself, it already meant you did the work of maintaining the network. So then you get paid proportional to the amount of calculation you performed. However, we all have now another way called proof of stake that is going to be adopted by Ethereum pretty soon. Under this model, you will stake a certain amount of cryptocurrency native to the blockchain. For instance, in Ethereum's case, it's ETH, guaranteeing that you will validate other people's transactions truthfully and therefore helping the network in operation. And these validators are picked at random, but typically there is a predetermined randomization rule, such as who are the earliest validator, or et cetera, et cetera. And this, after picked random, they will get to be the one who adds the next block and win rewards. In Ethereum's case, they will win ETH. And if the network identifies a validator as malicious, which means the validator is sending wrong data or sabotaging others, then this validator will lose the staked native coin. Therefore, playing against the system will become very expensive. In both cases, no matter if it's proof of work, such as Bitcoin, or proof of stake, which would be the future stage of Ethereum and currently some other cryptocurrencies, you both will need very expensive either hardware or money upfront. And as validators or miners, you all can be anonymous, and any one of you that fits the criteria can be either a validator or a miner. The other interesting thing to mention is actually POS emerges, partially because proof of work method is very energy intensive. We hope to reduce a lot of the electricity by switching. We also have many other mechanisms being developed and tested, hoping to achieve optimal balance in network performance and costs involved.
Great. So now that we have the concept of Bitcoin, Ethereum, proof of work, proof of stake, and of course, there are many, many, many other cryptocurrencies that we're not covering today. One of the common challenges is, well, how do I actually get one of these tokens or currencies? In order to do that, we've often resorted to what's called an exchange. An exchange is very similar to what you might think of as a stock exchange or an FX exchange. These were set up to handle equities or foreign currency conversions. In the case of a digital asset such as a cryptocurrency, it's the same concept. It's usually a centralized third party that's allowing a payment gateway to be able to receive fiat currency. So what is fiat? Fiat is any sovereign-backed currency, such as a US dollar, the RMB, or any Thai baht, et cetera, et cetera. These are all fiat currencies. Oftentimes, they're not digital, but they may be in the future with central bank digital currencies. But the concept would be, we need to be able to provide a place where one party can exchange with another party. The centralized exchange allows multiple parties to come together, place, buy, or sell orders, and be able to then sell their fiat currency in exchange for people that have either done proof of work or proof of stake or any other consensus mechanism to go and generate tokens. Those tokens are then sold to the other party, and each party is then able to cash out by withdrawing their cash or withdrawing the tokens that they've done. This concept of an exchange traditionally was done centrally, but in fact, now many times people are able to do this in a fully decentralized exchange. We're not going to go into decentralized exchanges today, but just understand that the concept still at a broad sense remains the same. We're exchanging one thing for another. One of the unique things that is necessary when dealing with a digital asset is the concept of a wallet. We want to be able to send and receive various different transactions representing tokens or coins. This is blockchain specific, meaning every single blockchain would end up having their own wallet. Sometimes, though, they can be combined together into a common wallet that can support many blockchains, but nonetheless, each blockchain is going to have its own nuances into how it works. Many of them, though, work on the concept of what's called public and private key encryption, meaning you're going to have a public key that represents your address on the blockchain. And it's public because you can freely share it with anyone else to prove what assets you hold. But the public key itself doesn't allow any transactions to happen. The only way you can actually create a transaction, meaning send some tokens or some other event on a blockchain, you must have what's called the private key. The private keys are therefore quite critical and quite sensitive. You never want to share a private key. As well, in order to generate the private key, as you can see my example down here below, it's a random string of letters and numbers. It's quite difficult, I would say, for most people to remember this. As a way to make it a little easier, the private key can be generated in something called a seed phrase, or sometimes called a mnemonic. Seed phrases tend to be 12, maybe 24 different random words, usually English, that can then be used to generate this string. And what we want to do in either case is never share our seed phrase or mnemonic with anybody else ever, under any circumstance, no matter what they say. And as well, back it up. Meaning, as soon as you generate a seed phrase, you're going to want to write it down offline, not on your computer, not on an email, not on a text message, not with somebody else even watching over you. You really want to make sure this is written down, ideally on a piece of paper, or even better, on a piece of metal, somewhere secure. And you can put it in multiple places too. And this is something that, should you lose your wallet, you've actually lost nothing as long as you still have your seed phrase or private key. And this is quite critical then. You want to make sure that you back it up in a place that is secure, only you have access, and that way it's yours and yours forever. Now, this is considered anonymous, meaning that once you've generated this public key, nobody can really tell exactly who you are yet, meaning that you've not registered your name or phone number or provided any other bank details to prove who you are. Of course, it is public, meaning anybody on the blockchain can go and look at your transactions. And this applies for both Bitcoin and Ethereum. And with a little bit of work, they might be able to de-anonymize you. So although it is by default anonymous, you shouldn't assume that it actually is an anonymous network. In fact, many times, if something were to happen that's quite bad, they will be able to figure out who the actors involved were by a lot of other data. There are many different types of wallets. When you first sign up for an exchange, and often this is the very first wallet that most people interact with, it may even be the last, you're going to likely get an exchange-based wallet. One example of an exchange is Binance, and they happen to be quite big, so it's quite common. But there are hundreds, if not thousands, of very big exchanges now in the world. But they all normally will have some concept of an exchange-based wallet. This is a centralized company, meaning that they are managing your wallet. They're linking it often to your ID. In order to sign up for many of these exchanges, you're going to have to KYC, know your customer. They're going to verify your identity documents and potentially a lot of other information to allow you to have an account on their exchange. This is quite beneficial. Should you lose your access to the exchange, like you forgot your password, then great, you can oftentimes work with them to either reprove your identity or reset your password, just like any other type of account that you may have. Of course, there's a downside. In the case of an exchange wallet, you do not control the private key. They do. So there is no way to back up your private key. There is no seed phrase, which is, again, a good thing, but also kind of a bad thing. The adage in cryptocurrency is not your key, not your coin. And there is then a risk of keeping a large amount of assets on any exchange wallet. While it's a very good place if you intend to use the exchange to keep some assets, we don't recommend that you keep a large amount of assets on any exchange wallet. As a better practice, we recommend the alternatives. The best alternative on the other side here is a hardware wallet. One example is a Trezor, or a Ledger is another one, both very common, and there are other very reputable hardware wallets out there. The goal of a hardware wallet is that it provides very good security. In fact, the place that the only way to be able to send a transaction is to actually plug it on in. When it's unplugged from your computer, it's called a cold wallet. It's not connected to the internet. It literally cannot create any transactions. And that makes it much more secure than an exchange wallet, which is hot. It's on the internet. It could be hacked, or the exchange could have a problem, or the exchange could, in fact, completely disappear from the face of the planet with all of your tokens. A hardware wallet, on the other hand, remains offline by default, and until you plug it in, it's very unlikely that anything can happen. And if somebody were to pick up your hardware wallet, most of them will have PIN codes as well as other security devices to ensure that nobody can just run away with all your tokens. They still then require a private key. You are in control of your private key with a hardware wallet, which means it is a self-custody. You must then therefore back it up. You will need to take that seed phrase and again, write it down offline on paper or metal and ensure you don't lose it. If you lose it, you'll lose your tokens. And that is a very sad event that can happen. So you need to be very careful about it. An alternative to a hardware wallet would be an application wallet. An example of one would be Exodus, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of various different application wallets. Please be careful with any type of application wallet. You're going to want to vet, do other people trust this particular wallet? It is possible that some wallets are not trustworthy, and well, they can take your tokens then. But they worked on software, meaning there is no physical hardware. This is kind of warm, a wallet. It's not quite hot. It may be offline most of the time, but it is on your computer, but a lot of them will be encrypting your private key. And this is critical. They'll then usually ask for some sort of password to access it. You need to then ensure that you're performing some sort of backup on the seed phrase as well. So make sure you keep it offline, same principle. Some of these wallets can allow interacting with many different blockchains, so they can become quite useful for interacting with a wide variety of different blockchains. In fact, they tend to support even more blockchains than some of the hardware wallets may support. An emerging type of wallet is the Web3 wallet. A very common example of this is Metamask. It's very easy to use. It behaves in many ways just like an application wallet. In fact, with Metamask, it can also integrate to a hardware wallet. And then you get the best of both worlds of it's an application wallet that can provide you some quick details, but in order to send a transaction, it can interact with your hardware wallet. It also can act as its own software-based wallet. And again, please back up your seed phrase. And we'll be taking a look at this very shortly. So some common warnings here. Always, always, always back up your seed phrases. Never, never, never share them with anyone. And do not store them on any computer unencrypted. Ideally, personally, I would only recommend storing a seed phrase offline on a piece of paper or metal in a very secure location. Once you send a transaction as part of the blockchain, it is immutable. It can never be refunded, meaning you are in self-control. And if you make a mistake, it's possible there'll be nobody there to help you out, neither the exchange, there's no customer support network to go in contact to help you out. So this is one of the challenges of blockchains. You have to be quite careful and avoid making mistakes. So go slowly, make sure you understand what you're doing. Tips: always use two-factor authentication, 2FA. What this means is, in addition to using a password, a very secure and unique password, please also ensure you turn on 2FA for the applications and services you're using. This can be an application like Google Authenticator, or it could be an SMS text message sent to your phone to verify, is it you? This helps ensure, should your password get compromised, chances are they won't be able to run away with your tokens or get access to your exchange or other critical applications. Do not reuse your passwords. This is quite common where people may say, oh, I'm signing up for an exchange. I'll just use the same password as I use for my Instagram, my email, my Facebook, my WeChat, and every other service. And chances are you'll make a mistake sometime and a hacker will find that password. And a lot of times, the first thing they're going to go try is seeing if you have an account on any of the common exchanges. And again, trying to steal your tokens. So it's critical. Use a password manager. Something like Bitwarden is something I highly recommend, and use unique passwords for each different application you use. For myself, I actually don't know any of my passwords. I really do trust a password manager all the time. And make sure you research these wallets before using it. Make sure when you're interacting with a wallet, it is the right website, it is the right application. Really slow down and be careful. When you end up using self-custody, you are in control, which is quite powerful and quite fun in a sense. But it can be real loss if you forget to do these basic concepts to ensure that you don't make a mistake. And there is no way of reverting on a blockchain. So with that, let's go take a look at how MetaMask works. This was a Web3 wallet. And then we're going to go and take a look at how we can use POAP, Proof of Attendance Protocol, to get everybody an NFT and be able to understand, how does this blockchain thing work in real life? And does it have real purpose? Does it actually try to solve something? So I'm going to go through the example here of starting with Chrome. You don't have to use Chrome if you use a different browser. MetaMask does support a wide variety of different browsers, but a Web3 wallet is actually a wallet that interacts with your browser. So rather than having to go to a separate piece of hardware or go to a separate application on your phone or your computer, this one's directly going to be integrated in your browser and then able to interact with the web pages you're on. We call this Web3 because it's bringing the blockchain directly on into the web interface. And through blockchains, we can do ownership. So that's the concept behind Web3, is ownership. So you'll go to metamask.io. This is one example of a Web3 wallet. It's going to give you some options on how to download it. They do support Chrome, iOS, Android, and a bunch of other browsers. So chances are, depending on whatever you're using, you can get MetaMask to work. Click on Install for Chrome. And as a best practice, double check some things here. Make sure the URL is in fact the Google Chrome store. You will need a VPN if you're in China to be able to access this. Or if you're on an app store, make sure it's the real MetaMask. There are many, many people that will try to scam. Just like anything on the internet, double check. In this case, good indicators, we do have 10 million plus users. It is the metamask.io extension. This is legit. We can add it to Chrome. We're now adding MetaMask, so we'll click on Add Extension. And now that MetaMask has been added on in, you may find that your Chrome interface likes to hide it. At least mine does for some reason. So go to the puzzle icon, no idea why. And you'll find that in your extensions, it's here. I usually have to click the pin icon to go find this cute little fox. The fox is MetaMask. By clicking on it, it's going to launch it and start this tutorial of getting you started with MetaMask. Go ahead and click on Get Started. If you're new to MetaMask, which I assume you are, you're going to be creating a new wallet. If, however, you were to lose your wallet, this is where you're going to enter in your secret recovery phrase, or as we called it, the seed phrase or mnemonic. Again, the seed phrase, mnemonic, recovery phrase, whatever we call it, it's quite sensitive. It's something you never want to lose, because if you ever lose your computer, no problem. You can always recover your wallet using that. Let's go ahead though and set up a new one. They're going to ask, do you want to help improve MetaMask with some diagnostics? I trust them. You don't have to. You can exclude yourself, but I'm going to go ahead and click I agree. It's now asking for a password. This password is going to be prompted every time you launch a browser to ensure that nobody else who happens to use your computer is going to accidentally go and take your tokens. And if I could actually type today, that'd be great. There we go. And the terms of use. I'm sure you've all read them. Create. At this point, if you're doing this at home, I do highly recommend watching this 1.5 minute video. It's quite informative. A lot of it is actually some of the things we covered previously and some of the tips that we talked about, never ever sharing your passwords, never ever reusing your passwords, et cetera, et cetera. Please watch the video. Click next. All right, here's the most sensitive part of the entire experience, the secret recovery phrase. Now, I'm doing this over Zoom. You should never do this over Zoom. You should make sure that nobody else is in the room. Ideally, you're going to do this and you're going to have a piece of paper or even a piece of metal next to you so that you can write this down. Do not skip the step. In fact, it's going to actually test you to make sure that you did it correctly. We're going to go ahead and click this. This is now the secret mnemonic phrase. Now, I'm doing something bad and I'm going to copy and paste it, but you're going to instead write it down on a piece of paper. And once you're done with that, this is now going to be what is used to generate your private keys when interacting with the blockchain. Go ahead and click next. All right, now is the test. They actually, as a very good app, double check to ensure, did you actually write down your seed phrase? So we now need to do this little test and actually click in order each of these words. And again, the order does matter. R, man, bench, century, circle, wisdom, ping. And take a moment to just kind of think just how incredible it is that these short little words could actually generate something so random that everybody in the world could be generating hundreds of these random words. And in fact, they won't collide. This is one of the interesting things technologically that the blockchain is doing, is using public-private key cryptography to be able to give everybody effectively infinite number of unique addresses. Click confirm. We're done. We've now set up MetaMask. Click on all done. It's now going to say this is what's new in MetaMask. No offense, we don't care. Close it. And now MetaMask has been successfully set up. How to use it? You can now click anytime you want on the little fox icon in the upper right-hand corner and get a very nice, concise information page about your account. In fact, you can go create more accounts. There's no restriction here. If you want to go create 3 more accounts, just click on 3 more accounts and you'll have 3 more wallets. Each wallet, or account as they're calling it, is going to effectively have its own public address. You can click this right here and copy your public address. This is now your public key. This one's fine to share. It's your seed phrase that you never want to share, but your public key now represents you on the blockchain. This particular MetaMask is currently set up to use the Ethereum mainnet, meaning it's using Ethereum. And we can see that currently this wallet is empty. It has 0 ETH in it. But it doesn't mean that this wallet is useless. We can now start to use this MetaMask with other applications to be able to sign transactions to prove this is in fact my account. One of the applications that you can use with no money, there's no tokens required, just completely free, is the proof of attendance protocol. So what I want you guys to start to do is copy your public address. And if you haven't already, I want you to go on out to poap.xyz. So let's go take a look at that. Of course, it lost it. Right. On poap.xyz, you can learn more about the proof of attendance protocol. This proof of attendance protocol is used to prove that somebody, either in real life, ideally, or even in virtual events like we are in today, attended something. It could be an event, it could be a webinar, it can be really anything. And it allows people then to get an NFT, a non-fungible token, a badge, if you will, to kind of prove that you were there. The way it works is by giving these out to Ethereum addresses. And they do this by default on a chain of their own called Gnosis. Well, not their own, but somebody else's. But it works with the Ethereum ecosystem. You guys can go take a look at this, and it's very simple, in fact, for you guys all to go create your very first POAP events. So if you happen to run events, whether it be at work or through a community organization, and you want to recognize people who are actually showing up to your event, this is kind of a fun way of doing it. Let's go ahead and give you guys your POAP. If you've already installed POAP on your mobile device, which I recommend you to go do, you can then go ahead and try to scan this QR code. Let's see if we can get this to work. Of course, my browser crashed and I don't know if it's now going to work. Let's see. While that is loading, let's perhaps go take a look at the event itself. So the event that we created today has now a badge called 468662, which represents my token for attending OffChain Code Intro to Blockchain, April 13th, 2022. This badge is represented by this picture, which I made and submitted, and allows me now to then say it's associated with my Ethereum wallet that I have put out here. If other people want, they can join my QR and be able to get proof that they attended this particular session today. Now, I sincerely hope this works, but it appears we're having some technical difficulties. So please hold on. I will try to pull up this. Perhaps maybe Judal, we can pause here and take some more questions. But give me just a moment while I try to pull this back up. The other thing I'll show is that this is on a blockchain, and we can go ahead and look at that on the XDAI blockchain. XDAI is an Ethereum-based blockchain. It's called a layer 2 or a side chain. This allows transactions. And I think from a technical angle, this is a little bit overwhelming, but it is interesting for some of the technical people in the audience to see, well, how does this all work? What's happening here is a transaction is being recorded to the blockchain, and it allows me to then see in my POAP, I had this token 468662 with this picture. And we see in the blockchain itself, the same information being recorded down, 468662. This is then being associated with my Ethereum address. It's being sent to this address. And in Metamask, I can then come and see, 06F ... 565163. Yes, that is in fact me. What POAP is doing is minting this non-fungible token and then issuing it to my Ethereum address and forever issuing me a token that proves I attended this event. And that is one of the use cases of a blockchain. Is if you want to write down something that is recorded forever, can never be taken away by anybody else, and prove something, this is a very good, valid use case of a blockchain. So I highly recommend checking out POAP, and perhaps now we'll take the questions while I try to go set up the QR code so people can actually go and take a look. Bear with us.
Thank you, Ben. I think there are a couple questions that people asked before while you're working on making this happening. I can perhaps answer some of them. So very early on, there's a question about why so many centralized finance experts and governments say that blockchain allows money laundering if transparency, trustless, borderless, and open are the pillars of the blockchain technology. So I think this is a great question. I think that it is true that blockchain, people can use blockchain for money laundering. It happened before. I think most people probably heard of dark web, and then also Bitcoin used in some illegal cases. But this is precisely a symbol of this whole open concept, because what it means is even if you're using it for illegal purpose, you cannot be censored and you have access to blockchain. Of course, that comes with both benefit and problems. There are, however, government do hire blockchain experts to actually try to trace money laundering or other illegal activities or anti-terrorism on blockchain by using analytics. So as shared with Ben shared before, and it's not completely anonymous. Whatever is happening on chain can be traced if experts know what they're doing. So this also brings to another interesting question that people always have regarding the legality of cryptocurrency. I think later on there's also a question talking about the European Parliament with this upcoming MiCA regulations, which stands for basically, one second. Yeah, this basically markets in crypto assets. So legality or legal framework, how every government or organizations treat cryptocurrency can vary from country to country. Some countries are very open to the innovation, such as Portugal or say couple overall in the United States, especially some like Miami or a couple places, or Singapore. They're very open to blockchain or cryptocurrency, where some other countries are taking a very conservative approach, such as in China. So legal constraints do make a lot of things that's happening with cryptocurrency difficult. So it's something that we have to be very mindful and be adaptive of. Ben, are you good with?
I'm trying.
What do you do?
Yeah, I
Okay.
do apologize, but I agree with your answer. I'll also add to it that, of course, money laundering and other bad actors have existed quite a long time on traditional banking networks. As any new technology comes out, it's then ripe for actors to try to exploit it. But I think what we're seeing now happen is more regulation come into the space. One of the key points that needs to be regulated is the exchanges, especially centralized exchanges. A lot of them now require KYC, know your customer, to be able to ensure. And once you know how people are getting on and off from fiat to cryptocurrencies, these anonymous networks are not quite anonymous in many cases. They provide a lot of information that can give law enforcement and regulators abilities to find out who is involved. Doesn't mean it's foolproof, just like anything. There are ways of evading it. But I think it ends up actually providing more transparency than physical cash. When cash is being transacted around old paper money, well, it doesn't provide any blockchain. It doesn't provide any paper trail. The blockchain, though, allows us to have an immutable record that any law enforcement or regulator can go back forever and go and investigate. And that provides a wealth of information for breaking apart criminal rings, because chances are they'll make a mistake eventually. And when they do, it'll all fall apart, and allows then these bad actors to be caught in a much more efficient way. And I think the pros have to be considered with the cons. There's a lot of efficiencies that come about from blockchains that for any digital currency are far superior to existing ways. And it allows a lot of new types of interactions that can provide new capabilities for all types of users, not just people that have existing assets, but even people who previously weren't served by traditional finance. So it's something that I think is going to continue to be a good discussion to have. All
Yeah,
right.
just
I think
you're good. Okay.
Apologies, guys. Let's see if this actually works. Hooray! All right. So
Oh, cool.
if you were able to get POAP installed on your mobile phone, you're going to want to open it up now, and you're going to go and click on Mint. And in the Mint functionality, you'll see QR code. You can then scan this QR code and go join this event. And it'll then issue to your Ethereum address an NFT on the XDAI chain that proves you were actually here. So I'll leave this up. If anybody wants to go and scan it and try it out, feel free to go ahead and scan the Zoom session and see if you can get it. And this is relatively new. So if you have questions or issues, let us know. We're trying it out.
Ben, do you want to open the mic so that people can ask questions if they want to?
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself. I don't think there's any restrictions here, and feel free to ask questions live.
Okay, cool.
Hi, Ben. Can I start?
Go for it.
Hi, my name is Pierre. You were mentioning about Binance. And when you have a wallet with Binance, you don't have your keys. Is there any way to get your keys with Binance?
Great question. So like any exchange, most exchanges or blockchain centralized applications provide what's called a custodial wallet. These do not provide you your keys or your seed phrase. In fact, that's by design. They're providing custody for you, which is a good thing in some sense, because you don't have to write it down or back it up or anything. But if you really want to secure your assets, especially if you have a large amount of them, you really should be moving them to a self-custody solution. And I would recommend a hardware wallet is the best way of doing that. But it does mean for most exchanges, they will charge a withdrawal fee. Now that withdrawal fee is doing two things. One, it's often paying the blockchain network, the miners or the validators, But additionally, it's part of the business model that they're charging to keep the exchange running. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and maybe linked to this then. I mean, for example, Binance is great for staking. It's very easy to stake your coins, like this kind of things.
Yep.
Is it possible to, I mean, let's say for your MetaMask, usually like, do you have to connect to like another account and then you send your coins from another account to stake, or can you stake while keeping the coins on your MetaMask?
Great question again. So many exchanges, Binance included, are now offering staking services. Now, we're not getting in today what is staking and how do you do all these other type of lending and other type of protocols. But the same still applies. They're doing it on your behalf. So in the case of using an exchange wallet, no, you are not fully in control. The exchange is. If you want to be fully in control, you would have to withdraw it to your own personal wallet. A MetaMask or other similar wallet may be applicable. But some of these offerings are only available if you use their custodial exchange wallet. So I hope that answers your question. It does depend, of course, on each exchange is slightly different, but it depends on how much you're keeping there. I would recommend be careful on keeping it too much on a single exchange, but I can say Binance is perhaps one of the better ones. They've been around for a while. They do very good security. They have a lot of different things. I can't say that for every cryptocurrency exchange, but I still have a general sentiment that I wouldn't want to keep a large amount of my assets on there.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Hello, Ben.
Hey.
Yes, so I went to Pop app.
Yes.
So I want to scan the QR code. So it doesn't scan from my picture, right? I need to have the QR codes out of the phone and then scan it with camera, right? Only that way, right?
You need to open up the POAP app and go into the Mint function and then QR and then scan this particular QR code. Correct.
I did it. I mean, your QR codes I need to scan. I have to get it out of the phone because it gets scanned inside, you know. I'm trying to scan, but I noticed that I have to get the QR code out of the phone and then use the phone camera to scan. That's the only way to do it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me know. And yeah, the other thing I'll recommend, I'm seeing it in the chat, please make sure you have your VPN on. POAP is unfortunately blocked in China.
Yes.
So if you are in China, you will need a VPN to use this one. I should have mentioned.
Yeah, I'm just telling that for other people to know, they have to get your QR code out of the phone first.
Cool.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm happy to answer any other questions people have. I know we try to give the basics in as concise as possible. I think this is a very interesting area of finance and technology converging together. And there's many other social aspects too around blockchain. So if people want to have other questions or conversations, we're happy to go and help answer them.
Hi, Ben. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks for holding the session tonight. Just got a real quick question regarding the cold wallet part. Where are all the assets stored? Like when it is kind of transferred from, say, Binance to a cold wallet that you just mentioned?
That is a fantastic question. And I think it actually goes to the heart of what is a wallet? Wallet is kind of, when we think of a wallet in our back pocket, the money is literally in our back pocket, right? If I lose that wallet, all the money should be gone with it. And it's actually kind of a bad analogy because it's not true with a blockchain. If you lose your wallet, you didn't lose anything. In fact, it's still, all the assets are always on the chain. The wallet doesn't matter. And I think that's something that the word wallet kind of throws people for a loop when they think about what is a wallet. You always have your assets on the blockchain. The wallet is actually just the key to accessing the blockchain to get your assets. So you think about it that way, think of it more as a key than a wallet. I'm sorry to change the metaphor, but yeah, You never are keeping your actual assets in the wallet. They're always just on the blockchain, just to answer your question.
Right. So does that mean that when I'm transferring my assets off of, say, Binance, does that mean that I'm kind of erasing some of my records off Binance so that I don't have any hold of my keys, either private or public, in that perspective? Or
nothing's getting erased. It's just adding a transaction to the blockchain. And what's actually happening behind the scenes is a wallet that is owned by Binance, in that case, is updating on the blockchain that it's sending to your wallet that's controlled, that you control. That's all that's happening. So it's actually still the same asset. It's just moving from one address that's controlled by Binance to an address that you control.
I see. Okay, sounds good. Thanks for explaining.
No problem.
Oui.
Really great question.
Carton. Check c'est chez sa sœur là-bas.
All right, I'm going to put everybody else back on mute. Unmute yourself if you want to talk again. So we had a question from Jerry about how does Ethereum name service, ENS, work? How can I have one mapping to my address? So Ethereum name service is a protocol that issues an NFT on the Ethereum blockchain. And this is a more advanced concept. You don't need an ENS. There's no need for everybody to have an ENS, but they are kind of fun. You can think of them as similar as domain names. Like if you have, I have benshadroff.com, or if you have google.com or some other website.com, it's the same idea. What it's doing is taking a very common English word that you can pick yourself. In my case, I picked benjaminshadroff.eth, and it maps it to a public address. And that makes it quite useful because then other applications on the Ethereum ecosystem don't have to remember your long string of digits to go and say whose wallet it is. That's purely optional. The way it actually works is an NFT. It's actually saying as an NFT, you own this record, but the NFT has attributes to kind of like a phone book, say, what is the public address that's linked to this? And there's a couple other things that I could get into, but that's the high level of how ENS is working. I hope that answers your question, Jerry. I do want to thank.
Hi, Ben.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off.
No.
I have some questions about the use cases of blockchain in the field of humanitarian, refugee relief, or financial inclusion. Do you, based on your many years of experiences in the industry, do you see any potential of the distributed ledger technology to be used for development?
Development, and I didn't catch the use case. What was the use case again?
It could be anything that's development related. It could be financial inclusion, could be climate change, it could be refugee relief, for example, registering the number of refugees and making sure that no one is left out. Yeah. And financial inclusion, it could be promoting banking services to the population who is currently unbanked in many poor countries.
This is absolutely one of the use cases that blockchain is bringing about. It has really lowered the barrier to entry to nothing. You don't have to, by default, have anything. Literally, as long as you have a mobile phone, as we can show, you should be able to get access to these fintech services using blockchain. I think that's really compelling for a number of different use cases. For one, this is allowing people to then participate and receive assets. Peer-to-peer communication of currency is inherent with a lot of these blockchain. So that can really provide a lot of efficiencies. I happen to be mostly living these days in very privileged worlds. But when you travel to other countries that may not have a stable currency or have concerns on being able to transfer from one person to another, blockchains provide a lot of capability that may be vastly better than what those particular sovereign currencies are providing. It also, depending on the currency you're using, again, it very much depends on the protocol, can outperform. I don't particularly look at it from that perspective in terms of making money, but you can also achieve stability because it has source code And because the source code can be audited, I tend to trust that more than social consensus of people making decisions. For ESG initiatives, we're seeing a lot of use cases where blockchain can be used for things to help vote, to ensure fairness, to include in transparency who is involved in making governance decisions. So I think this is going to help promote new forms of governance that previously were very difficult, especially when dealing with a global environment where not everybody can be in the same room. And it allows people to come together and vote using tokens and this way of joining. I think it's opened a very interesting discussion on carbon offsets, and the costs of blockchains is becoming a very political topic, polarizing even within the blockchain community. I think it's hard to argue that proof of work is not very efficient. Proof of work is not particularly good for the environment. I would say that there's a lot of other things that are much, much, much worse for the environment than Bitcoin mining or any other proof of work algorithm. But that being said, there's no reason that we have to use energy that is non-renewable. I would say proof of work always should be done with renewable energy, just like everything else. When possible, we should be using renewable or nuclear energy to do these type of transactions with blockchain. And compared to traditional finance, I would say it's actually much more efficient to be using blockchain, even with proof of work, over traditional finance in most cases. And the capabilities are just far more capable. So I hope that gives you a flavor of what I think in this space. And I do think there's a lot of potential for blockchain for helping improve, getting more people to be banked through blockchains, as well as opening up new ways of doing consensus with decentralized autonomous organizations and new ways of voting, et cetera. Broad topic.
Yeah, also to add that a very recent use case of blockchain technology is in Ukraine's case. Ukraine government actually, amid the whole war, legalized cryptocurrency, and they actually on their official Twitter address they published donation that they accept donation in terms of cryptocurrency, and in the end they received, I think, more than $250,000 dollars and some NFT as well that being deposited to their cryptocurrency addresses that they end up using to help Ukraine. So that is like a very recent high-profile user case of maybe cryptocurrency for good.
And in many ways, it's not something all that new. We've seen war bonds be issued in the past for global events. What is new, I guess, is it doesn't have any borders to it. It is completely permissionless, is the way that a lot of people in blockchain would say. If you can think of it, you can pretty much go do it. And that inspires people to go try new ideas out. Of course, the regulations will catch up, but I think it's a very interesting wild, wild west phenomenon where we're seeing new things emerge that will have positive benefits. So Guido asked a
very, very good. Thank you very much.
No problem. When do you expect?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to have a follow-up, but I can also ask you offline next time in Shanghai.
Oh, no worries. Go ahead and ask it. Go for it.
Okay, so you mentioned there is innovation in using blockchain for the unbanked population. What exactly is the innovation? Because you need mobile phones, and that is already sort of the technology being used by a lot of fintech companies, fintech solutions. Where is the innovation if you add the blockchain layer on top of fintech?
That's a fair question. So the difference is that a lot of banks and other institutions in many countries will require you to be physically present. I think that can be quite challenging for a lot of people around the world to be able to go to a bank branch. It's a very foreign concept to me now. I think we should see more innovation in the space to allow banks in general to operate without having to think of a physical branch, especially post-COVID, where literally, well, at the moment, I'm currently in lockdown in Shanghai. So I literally couldn't visit a bank branch even if I wanted to right now. Not that I have any desire to do so. But I think this is an interesting phenomenon where, blockchain by default does not require any physical presence whatsoever. It also does not require any minimum amount of assets. There's a lot of things within finance around the world that require accredited investor status, professional investor status. These are all just effectively false barriers erected to keep people from participating. And while I think there was some good intent around that to ensure people that don't have means don't accidentally get involved in complicated financial instruments that they're going to lose out on, I think it also has a lot of damage. I think there's a conversation missing here to say blockchain really makes it permissionless. If you understand what you're getting into, you are allowed to do it. Now, I don't recommend it for everybody. I think there's actually a middle ground, which is you should be responsible about your finances. You should not put everything you own into crypto. You should have very good understanding of the risks you're taking. And I think we're going to see a lot of fintech and banks play a role in that conversation. But that being said, I think it's setting a threshold that means anybody can go do it. You shouldn't have to go in person. You shouldn't have to have any assets. And if you want to go and engage in various different financial products, far be it from me to say whether or not you should or not. I think I can advise you, though, on some of the risks involved.
Yeah, and I also want to add that for fintech companies that are trying to help unbanked populations, actually what blockchain technology or cryptocurrency can do is actually help these fintech companies to do a better job. So they can either use cryptocurrency as a way of raise funding much faster and easier than the traditional way, because sometimes a lot of these microfinance companies don't really get investors. They're not investors' favorite. It's not that easy for them to have actually good access of bank loans or financial bankings. So that's one way. The other way is actually a lot of the blockchain technology themselves, just standalone, they can be actually used, incorporated in the fintech technology so that they can have actually a lesser cost and a more scalable and more secure way to serving these unbanked people. Like in Philippines, for the longest time, or in Africa, they actually have, they're able to actually store their money and transfer using their phone to, they have like not smartphone, they have normal phone, and they go to the super convenience stores to top up cash in order to use to transact money using their phone. So what a fintech company can do is using blockchain to make this system work better and easier for these convenience stores to take people's money. So that is some other ways where we could see blockchain helping unbanked.
Yep, I hope that answers
Fair
your
points. Thank you both.
No problem. And it's a really good question. Yeah. We did have a question from Guido on when do you expect banks to allow crypto asset accounts, or would that defeat the purpose? I would say it doesn't defeat the purpose. And Jonathan has commented here in China, we have the central bank digital currency, ECNY. So that is a digital asset. And I think this is going to be a very, very hot subject for a lot of banks and fintech, which is digital asset handling. Broadly, digital assets have many different categories. We can think about them in terms of either being a cryptocurrency, which has many different flavors in itself, or being something sovereign backed like a central bank digital currency. Within the cryptocurrency family, you have things that are actual currencies. These could be stable coins, or they could also be utilities. Some of them are hard to define as one or the other. Ethereum is both a utility in that it's providing gas for being able to issue the transactions, which can do any sort of smart contract logic, but it's also a currency. It is something that you can acquire and kind of pay. So it's slightly difficult to even categorize. I think a lot of, though, fintech and banks are waking up that digital assets do have utility. There was like a long conversation since when I joined in like 2013 that, oh, these things are just scams and they have no purpose and there's just no reason to have them at all. And I think we've definitively shown that over the years, there's a lot of uses for blockchain. It is an immutable ledger, which has utility. You can write something down and it's stored forever. And with things like Ethereum, there's a lot of utility there to be able to write smart contracts that can settle much faster than transactions in a bank or other databases that you may have to go and audit on a more frequent basis to keep correct. So blockchains do have quite a bit of utility. And we're seeing now banks start to adopt digital assets and public blockchains. Goldman Sachs, AZN, JP Morgan, they've all put out various different ventures into this space. Some of them are getting into it eventually directly. So I think it's an area to keep your eyes on to see what the banks and fintechs do in this space. It's definitely reaching every single level of discussion within these organizations to understand what are the potential implications, and especially the regulations, anti-money laundering and counterterrorism. These are challenging problems in and of themselves, even for regular assets, and digital assets are new, and the regulators are still weighing in on this discussion. So I think there's a lot of wait and see to make sure that the regulations are well understood before we see more adoption. I hope that answers the question.
Hello. Hello.
Hey.
Hi, Benjamin. Thank you for the sharing today. That I got one question for you regarding the anonymity of Bitcoin holders on these chains, and my idea is that they are anonymous and you are not able to track their transactions on the chain. Then for the sovereign economy, so how would a country like to track, because it's not trackable, the transactions, and therefore apply taxes, for them? Otherwise, it's not good for the economy to run. They have not able to collect taxes. So my question is actually for the countries that endorse Bitcoin, and countries like China that against the adoption of Bitcoin. So how would a country that endorse this to collect taxes that on the taxable transactions?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
So the question really then is around, between countries that are either outright banning it, like China has banned it for all companies to hold cryptocurrency. You're not allowed to also mine cryptocurrency in China, versus a country that has completely embraced it. There are tax implications. Most countries, not all, have some concept of capital gains taxes, meaning that if you were to sell an asset, any asset, doesn't have to be a cryptocurrency, it could be really anything, and you were to then sell it and make a profit, you need to pay a tax. And that tax may depend on many factors, could be dependent on how long you held the asset before selling it, long versus short-term capital gains. It could also be dependent on the type of asset, et cetera. But you're absolutely correct. It does pose a real challenge because traditionally, we use brokers to sell most other assets, like a stock. If we sold a mutual fund or a stock, the broker would have a responsibility for recording down when did you buy it, and they record down the amount that you bought it for and how much you spent, et cetera. And then when you sold it. And with traditional assets like equities, stocks, mutual funds, et cetera, you're not often sending it from one broker to another. And if they do, there's a lot of required forms, et cetera. With blockchain, on the other hand, it's quite common. You might buy something one day on Binance and then send it to your personal wallet, do a bunch of things, and then send it back. And I mean, realistically, we kind of all did this today. If you went and traveled around the world and took, your US dollars and then exchanged them to some other currency in another country and then came back, did you file your taxes correctly? Maybe, maybe not. Depending on how much you transferred, that was potentially a capital gains tax when you came back and you could have made a small profit. Nonetheless, the responsibility ends up falling on most cases on the individual. And to say the least, because I've done my taxes as best as I possibly could, it's extremely difficult with blockchains. In fact, it can be automated. There are many tools now available. I've used myself a number of these tools that'll actually scan the blockchain, find out where did you buy it from, all the different exchanges, et cetera. What did you do on the blockchain? And it'll actually do all the tax calculations. And it's not anonymous. As we said in the conversation, while the addresses themselves are anonymous by default, every exchange knows who you are, all the common ones at least. They're going to know what ID you did. So they know all the transactions that you did and then where you sent it to. And then more than likely, they're going to see what happened on the blockchain. A lot of this is quite revealing. And if the tax authorities in each competent location ask questions, they can audit you. I think that's going to be something that you should never pretend that this is fully anonymous and pretend that you don't have to pay your taxes. You do, just like anything that you do. And we're going to see the tooling, especially from most governments, improve on this as adoption inevitably will keep increasing to then automate the tax collection process. I do think, though, it invites a question. Is the old school way of collecting taxes the right way for the new world economies? Maybe not. Maybe there's a better way of collecting funds for the future. I don't know. But it's an interesting conversation nonetheless. The tools are out there. The responsibility is still there. The regulations still apply. Really, a lot of the regulation has remained quite the same. It's capital gains tax, and it has not changed a whole lot. So please pay your taxes. I hope that answered your question. Feel free to ask another one if I missed it.
Yeah, it's very good to hear your explanations on this, and also regarding the decentralization nature of blockchain. That I have another question that is the verified nodes on the chain that going to do the proof of what or the proof of stake, the verified transactions. So my question is, even with this decentralization, is the advantage of this claim advantage of the Bitcoin blockchain that I'm suspicious, into the future that whoever have this technical knowledge, like the founder members of Ethereum, that the power, previously that power was centralized in the central financial authorities of each sovereign countries. But if everybody is adopting this new technology, blockchain, then this power would be shifting from the sovereign countries to this group of people that who is more technically more. Yeah, more.
Let me try to repeat the question. So
yeah,
with blockchain.
I'm sorry, it's like cut off. The internet is really bad, so I really cannot understand half of it.
Let me try to repeat the question. So with blockchain, you're moving from really a sovereign authority that are issuing the rules of the protocol to a decentralized one. And depending on the blockchain, there are tokenomics. This is going to get complicated, where founding members may have a lot of coins in themselves. This was not the case of Bitcoin, but for others, including Ethereum, it's a valid one. And depending on how people adopted it in different countries, there may be centralized regions of power where, in the case of up until last year, before Bitcoin was banned, most of the hashing power was based in China until it was banned and then shifted elsewhere. So it can also create very interesting power dynamics in these decentralized networks to say who is really in control. And I think it is a fair question. These are decentralized networks, but they're not infallible networks. And this adds a lot of very interesting research. I would encourage everybody, if you're interested in this subject, read the original Bitcoin white paper, read the original Ethereum white paper. A lot of thought has gone into exactly how you can balance out these potential struggles. It's not perfect. There are ways that attacks can happen, but they're quite rare. In fact, much less so than I'd say on world economic stages. Wars happen a lot more frequently than what we're talking about here. But nonetheless, it is something that is interesting from a research perspective. In a practical sense, so these are very, very well distributed networks, especially Bitcoin and Ethereum. It would be quite difficult to go and get an ability to overtake the network. But I hope I can answer your question more offline. It's a very, very deep philosophical and research one, and maybe too much for a lot of the people on the call to fully understand.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Great question. We have a couple of recommended learning. Again, we didn't get to go into great detail, but if you want to go much, much deeper, definitely read the Bitcoin white paper, definitely read the Ethereum white paper. These are seminal papers that really do embody the entire ecosystem. Whether or not you want to hold Bitcoin or Ethereum, I'm not here to give financial advice. You can learn a lot from reading these papers. There's also ethereum.org, goes into a lot more depth on the various different types of capabilities that you can put on an Ethereum-like ecosystem. Again, a lot of the same things you can do on Ethereum, you can now do on many, many other chains. It's not to say they're the best. MIT has an open courseware where Gary Gensler, you may know him from the SEC in USA, he actually presented a lot of information about blockchains, and it's a very good course, completely free. As long as you can get access to it on YouTube, you can learn a lot. And there are a lot of great resources like CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap, where you can do a lot of research on other tokens. I do recommend, please be mindful, stick with the things that you can understand and research. Do not go off crazy and put a lot of into this without a financial plan. Talk to your financial advisor. Make sure you take sensible risks and do good security. Make sure if you're going to get into this space that you make good use of passwords and password manager, two-factor authentication, and back things up. So I think we'll go ahead and stop the recording now, but if people do want to stick around and ask more questions, I'm happy to take more questions.